The four basic washes in watercolor. What is a wash? A wash is a fine layer of watercolor evenly spread over a broad area. There are four types of washes: the flat wash, a gradated wash, wet on wet, and streaked wash. We're going to see all those today in action. Hi, this is Everett, Everett's Watercolors. Welcome to my classroom. Today, broadcasting to around the United States and all the way around the world. I'm on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And I'm in my studio today with my wife, Gloria.
Hello, everyone.
And she'll be monitoring the broadcast and also checking the chat room. Let me put the chat room on right now. The chat room is live, so give me a comment and let me know where you're from. And if you have questions or comments during the broadcast, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And as you're checking in new, make sure you subscribe, and also be prepared to watch for me every week on Thursday at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Now today I'm going to do what I call a classic class on watercolor washes, and I'm going to go over several of those. And every time I buy a new tube of paint, or a new brush, or a different kind of paper, I always test it out with different washes, because that's the real ingredient of watercolors. And we'll show you some of those techniques I'm going to do today to get an idea of what you can do with a watercolor wash. So let's go to my painting table and let me get started. Okay, let me go over the equipment today. I'm going to be using these colors up here in the watercolors. I'm going to use yellow lemon, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, Pyrrole red, ultramarine blue. Now these are Holbein artist watercolors, and also be using several brushes. Silver brush Hake brushes today, and I'll be using the Holbein watercolor brushes, which I'll discuss those when I start using them. Now, all these products are available on my website, everestwatercolors.com. And my Fun With Watercolors page is also on my website. On the navigation bar up at the top left of my website, you'll find Fun With Watercolors, and that's, you go there and you get a download of the pictures of today and any diagrams I have. Also, if you're interested, also paint along with me and join my Everett Watercolors art group on Facebook. Now, let me show you a couple of things here that I have. You'll see over here on my right in my palette, I have my secondary palette here, which is called a winged palette. And I'll show you a reason why for that today. Let me move this aside. Now, the way I've got the palette laid out, you'll see here in the colors, I've got over here in the wash section, these are wash areas, these are buckets here. I have a Pyrrole red, and this one right here on the left, top left. And on the bottom left, I have yellow lemon. And over here on the right top, I have ultramarine blue. So those are the primaries: red, yellow, and blue. That's where they're located here on this wing palette. And also I have burnt sienna down here in the middle. I'm showing here on the chart, burnt sienna down here. I have Pyrrole red, yellow ochre. I may put a little bit of yellow ochre in some of the paintings. Now here's ultramarine blue up here, the bucket, and also I have a green. I have a ochre's green, and also a quinacridone violet up here at the top. The only one I didn't discuss was yellow orange. We're going to use yellow orange today down here. And these two parts of the palette here are good for mixing. I'll show those again today. So that's the setup here for the wing palette. Let me put this aside. That's my color plan. I'll be using the majority for washes today. I'm going to be using the Hake brushes. Now I have two sizes. One's the large and one's the small. And both of these are both located on my website, everettswatercolors.com. And I'll also be using Holbein watercolor brushes. These are synthetic. This is a 3/4 inch. And I've got a 1/2 inch and a rigger over here on the side also I'll be using. I'll put those on the side of my palette. There's the rigger, number 4 rigger. And this is the 1/2 inch flat synthetic brush for Holbein. We'll put those aside there for a second. Okay, so the first one I'm going to talk about, the first wash we're going to talk about is the flat wash. And let me give it a reference photo here. A flat wash here, what happened in the sky, you notice the sky is one value, and of course, whatever the down here in the landscape is another value. You've got a light in a dark area. So that's really a purpose of a flat wash is when you're going to cover an area with generally one value or one general value, lights and darks. So that's what I'm going to do first. I'm going to do a flat wash. So I'll get started here. Wet the paper a little bit. I'll take the large Hake brush. I'll just dampen the paper just slightly. Just put a little moisture on the paper. It makes the paint flow a little smoother. So this is what I've done here is I've mounted watercolor paper, Gemini 140-pound watercolor paper on an 8x10 panel, and I've got it taped down with tape here so the side so it won't move around. So I've got it taped on the edges, and I've got 8.5. It's 8x11 in size. So the first thing I'm going to do on this I'll wet the Hake brush again. Now put it into a bucket of water, and I'll type out the extra moisture because I've already put water on the paper already, so I don't want to get too wet. And I'm going to start with the lighter value. In this case, I'm going to use lemon yellow, and I'm using the mixing. I'll just I just go into the little. These are my wash buckets here, or my wash palette, and I'm going to start here at the top, and you can see an overlapping stroke. I'll pick up a little bit more. Go back into the palette, pick up some more paint. So the flat wash is going to be one solid color all the way down. And I can go opposite directions. I'll come up now and go vertical. Now rinse out the brush, go back into the rinse bucket, and go in and get some fresh water on the. And when I come back, I'll squeeze out the excess water on the Hake brush. Okay, now what I'll do is take my tissue and I'll wipe up the edges here. I got the edges are pretty wet, so I'm gonna wipe off the edges of the painting. So this is a good way to do backgrounds for say sky, also for large buildings or some landscapes area. This is a good way to fill in an area with one solid color. Okay. All right, I'm gonna set this aside and let it dry. Okay. It's really wet, so I'll leave it over here on the side. So I've already done one ahead of time. So this is a flat wash. What here I use lemon yellow. I add a little bit of yellow ochre on this one, but it's still a flat wash. You can see here the solid color all the way down. Now I'm going to add a little bit of design to this. What I'm going to do is get these other boards out of the way, and I'll show you my design. I'm going to do here. I'm going to take and I'll bring it up. I'll bring it up on the close-up camera. So I've got a little on the flat wash here. I'm going to do a darker. I'm going to do a darker wash on top of that. Another flat wash on top of the first wash I did. Okay. So that's step number 2. It's a flat wash, and I'm calling it morning glow. So let's start off with that. So I'm going to take the Hake brush, dampen the brush, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of. Okay, I'm going to switch it back to my other camera. Get you back to the paint table. So the idea was put water in the Hake brush, moisten the brush, come back and damp it off. And now I'm going to pick up a little bit of burnt sienna from the palette. And over here I'm mixing up here on the side a little bit of burnt sienna. And maybe I'll pick up a touch of ultramarine blue, just to darken up just a little bit. So I want this to be a darker brown. So I add a little bit of burnt sienna and a touch of ultramarine blue. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and do that landscape I showed you in the beginning. A little bit of water on paper. All right, so my second wash now is going to be a flat wash on top of this first wash. So I'm going to go in here and just put in here with the Hake brush. I'm going to put a little landscape in. So I'm putting another flat wash on top of the original wash. So this is a classical way that watercolor is. You put one layer on top of another, and a flat wash is one of the basic ones you need to be able to do. And I've got a solid color all the way across from top to bottom. Okay, now what I'm going to do now, I'm going to rinse out the Hake brush and put it back in the rinse bucket. Rinse it out. Get it with a towel. Okay, now I'm going to add in, what I'm going to do is add some more detail here. I'm going to add in some trees. Let's say the outline I showed you, I had some trees going here. So I'm going to put in some trunks to get started. And then I'm going to pick up the rigger brush, load it with paint, and I'm going to put in some branches. Over here we'll put in some long branches on this one. So what I do with a flat wash is I can build up layers of color. Typically you would have a light, medium, and dark value in a landscape. Light value in the background and a dark value in the foreground here, for example, here. And on this one, I'm just going to have just one solid trunk and just a few limbs on this one. And on this one over here, I'm going to make, it's going to be all branches. Just a little variety, but here's where you put the second wash on and just make your design, okay? Okay, so we're going to put this aside. I can put a little darker color in that. I can add a little bit of dark, put in some, just touch it with the brush with a little paint in it. They get a little variety of value here on the tree, on the trees. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to say lay this aside, let it dry. Okay, so that's an example of a flat wash with the light color first and then a darker color on top. Okay. All right, now the second wash we're going to talk about is the gradated wash. Here, I'm going to bring my board over. Okay, and let me get you. I'm going to get you a. I got a photographic reference here. I'm going to show. So here's a good example of a gradated wash. When you look at the water, you see it's light here, and as you come forward, it gets darker. Okay, it's the same with the sky. Up here, the sky will be lighter at the bottom, and it will get darker as you go up to the top. So that's gradation in the landscape. You got light to dark. So a gradated wash is necessary to paint water and for skies. Okay. So let me go ahead and demonstrate that. So the first one I'm going to do is take the Hake brush and I think what I'm going to do here is I'm not going to rewrite the brush. I'm just going to go ahead and use it as a. I think I'll use the yellow one first. Let's start with the blue. Start with the blue. All right. So I'm going to start with the ultramarine blue. So I put the Hake brush into the ultramarine wash palette over here, and I'm going to go ahead now on a gradated wash. I'm going to go start with a dark color at the top. Then I'm going to take the Hake brush and put it into water, and I'm going to take off the excess moisture, and I'm going to come in and put another layer across there. Okay, then I'm going to go back into the water bucket, just water. Bring the brush back, dump it on a towel, then continue on. Okay, rinse out the brush. Rinse out the brush. Take out the excess water. And continue on. All I have is water in the brush now. Continue on down. All the way to the bottom. And I can go over this a little bit to let's say repaint the areas. I want to dark at the top. Rinse out the brush. All right, you don't want any paint in the brush. You want to just water it. When you get down to the halfway point here, I just want water in the brush. And continue on down to the bottom. Okay. Now, while it's still wet, we're going to put another wash in. And I have to watch the how much water is here because the Hake holds a lot of water. So you really have to be careful when you use a big brush like this, is to keep control of the water flow. So I'm going to go back here and just rewash that a little bit more. Now it's looking a little bit better. So I'm just kind of doctoring up what I have. I'm controlling the paint on the paper. Until I'm happy with the results. Okay, so now I've got a graded wash. I've got a dark at the top, and I got a light at the bottom. Okay, now I'm going to take the tissue. I'm going to wipe off the edges. Okay, now I'm going to turn this around. I'm going to flip it around the other side. Now I'm going to take I'll take a second brush because I've got two of them working here. I'm going to take a second brush and a second Hake brush, and I'm going to put it into the yellow, the lemon yellow. And I'm going to start up here with the yellow at this side. A little bit more up. I'm going to darken the top, and I go into the water, just plain water, into the rinse bucket. Take out the excess moisture, and I continue on. So I have less water. I have less paint now in the brush. And I continue on down. Go back in and get more water in the brush. Take out the excess moisture. And I continue on down. Okay. So I'm going to have a gradated wash from darker color down to lighter, and then the other side from darker to lighter. All right. So that's an example of a gradated wash going in both directions. Now, let me show you one here I've already finished. Let me move this aside. I'm going to let this dry. Room here. Okay. All right, here's a gradated wash I've already done before. I did the yellow at the top, and I used a little bit of quinacridone violet along with ultramarine here to give me a different color. But it's the same idea, going from dark to light, and then moved it around. And I went from a darker yellow all the way down to a lighter yellow. Okay, so I have two directions for my gradated wash, going from dark to light. All right, now let's look at a design I'm going to do on this. I'll take you over to my close-up camera. Okay, now on this close-up camera, oh, it's got to move it over a little bit here so you can see. Okay, this is a gradated wash, and you can see the title there, gradated wash. I'm going to put a little boat in there with a reflection in the water. Let me go back to the overhead. We're at the painting table. I'll bring it close up here to the other camera. So I've got a design here where I'm going to paint in a silhouette of a sailboat and a reflection in the water. Okay, so that's my design for this particular one. So what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to get two brushes here working. I'm going to pick up my Holbein half-inch brush, and I'm going to use a mixture here, a dark mixture again. I'm going to take burnt sienna, a little bit of ultramarine blue. Maybe I'll pick up a little bit of quinacridone violet. There's a little bit of Payne's gray here, so I have a nice dark mix. Okay, so I'm going to go in now. I'm going to go ahead and paint in that scene I just showed you. So I'm putting in a silhouette now of a boat. Okay, I'll pick up some more paint, and I'm going to put a mask in there with using the edge of the brush now, the edge of the brush. Okay. And I'm going to take let me take the half-inch brush now, a smaller brush. It's we're using the same paint mixture, and I'll come down here now. I'm going to put in the main mask, the main sail. Boom. That's usually at this time they got the mask with the sail down, and so I'll use the rigger brush now, loaded with paint, with dark paint, and I'll put in the lines. Okay. Now in this particular scene here, there'll be a little reflection in the water, so we'll put a little reflection. And there'll be a little reflection of the mask. It'll be a little lighter value. And I think I'll use the same brush for the lines, just a very thin lines. So these are reflections that are coming off the sailboat. And also there'll be some, I'm going to take a damp brush, which is a half-inch brush, take out the moisture, take out the excess water. I'm going to do some lines across here. What I'm doing now is I'm removing some of the paint. See the paint lines here by just taking a damp brush and moving it across the painted area, picks up the paint. And that will give us the indication that there's moving water. A little bit of this got a little bit smeared up here, but that's okay. You're just gonna just dampen that, and then take a tissue and then pick up the paint. It's also the reflection is going to be a little bit blurred, so that's good. You want the reflection not to be an exact duplicate of your object. So by wetting that paint a little bit, and just do a little wiggle here or there, that'll loosen up that reflection. Okay. Okay, so this is an example of a gradated wash where we have a dark to light value, and then the other way going. This will simulate a water and sky, which is a very good example of a gradated wash. Okay, I'm gonna put this aside. Okay, we got another wash, which is an interesting one. This one is called wet into wet wash, and this could be used. This is a painting I did. This is a reference I did. This is a painting I did on using spray bottles, and I used the Northern Lights. This is the Northern Lights that comes in. It's beautiful colors here, but there's no way you do this with simple brushwork. So it takes a wet on wet technique to do this. And I did it with spray bottles, but I'm going to do it with the brushes today, uh, just to give you an example. Not this particular painting, but this is a sample of what kind of material, what kind of subject matter you would use for a wet and wet technique. There are many of other examples. This is just one I chose today to show a very colorful picture what we're going to do. Okay, so what I'm going to do here now, I'm going to uh, take the Hake brush again, and I'm going to wet the paper. So I used a large Hake, put a little bit of water in it, and I'm just going to run it across the paper. I want this is wet and wet, so I want the paper nice and wet. Not soaking wet, but not, you want it damp. You want to have enough paint on there, enough paper weight on there, water on there to get the paint to flow. So I go both ways. I go sideways, then up and down. So the paper's wet now. Not soaking wet, but it's got enough paper, there's moisture on there that will take care of the flow. So that's what I use the large Hake for, is to cover a large area, put down water. I'm wiping up a little bit of excess moisture. Okay, so now I'm going to take the smaller Hake and I'm rinse it out a little bit. I'm going to pick up some color. I'm going to start with ultramarine blue. And what I do is I dip it into the palette, into the wash part of the wash palette. These wash buckets over here. Just put the tip in. That's all you need. You don't need to put much more in that. And I'm going to go ahead and put in a stroke or two. I'm going to leave some white paper. I don't want to cover everything. Leave some white paper showing. And I'm going to add a little more color in there. I want a nice combination of colors. So I'm adding color now on top of that wet mix to give me a nice flow here. Okay, now I'm going to, instead of rinsing out the brush, I'm going to pick up the other Hake. I got two Hakes working here. Now I'm going to pick up the red, Pyrrole red. So I rinse out the brush. Make sure there's no blue in there. I'm just going to pick up the pure red. So I rinse out the brush. Now I'm going to go into the red, Pyrrole red. Just dip the tip in. Now I'm going to go in and put in that red color on top of this. And come down here, put some red in here. And put a little bit here. Okay. Then what I'm going to do now, I'll get this, got one more to go. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tilt the paper. I'm going to let the flow. It's wet on wet, so the paper's wet, the paint's wet. So right now I'm tipping the painting up and down, vertically. I'm tipping it. Let them flow together. Then I'm going to go side to side. I'm going to tip side and back the other way, and let that color mix on the paper, wet on wet. Now every time you do this, you're going to get a different result. There's no way you can anticipate what you're going to get on a particular wash. It'll be different every time you do it, guaranteed. Okay, and then I'm going to wipe off the edges a little bit here. Okay, so that's an example right now of a wet and wet wash. Okay, now we can do something with this. What would this be used for? Well, this could be a sky. I mean, you can have sky. You can have a sunset colors, red, kind of orange and yellows on top of this, and you can make a sunset sky with a little bit of blue. Stay away from the yellows with the blue and the orange with the blue. You'll get a complementary mix on that one. But mixing it together like this. Now let's take one that I've done, and let's design a small little painting out of that. So I'm gonna put this aside. So that's a sample of a wet. You can see it's still wet. See the glossy is still wet, still shiny. When you look at it and it's still wet, then it's you don't want to paint on it while it's wet unless you want to do some more wet on wet technique. Put that aside. All right, so what I'm going to do now, let me show you. Instead of going to close up, I'm going to bring you up to my design. I'm going to go ahead and put a little house on this wet and wet wash, okay, and use the background as a sky. So that's my design. That's my design plan here for this wet on wet wash that I just did. Put that aside. So here's one I did earlier. This is a wet on wet dried with the same colors, Pyrrole red and Ultramarine blue. Okay. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take that design, but I prepared ahead a little bit for that. I took that design of that old cabin, and I'm going to turn this sideways. Let's use this side over here. Yeah. We'll use this side here. Yeah, it's your choice. And I made a stencil out of a piece of watercolor paper. So I drew a design of the building, and then I cut out some pieces of it. So I'm going to put that down on the paper in position right there. And then I'm going to take my brush. In this case, I could use the Hake brush, but I think I'll use the Holbein brush. And I'm going to take these same colors I've been using here for darks. It's a mixture of everything. It's got red and blue. It's got some Payne's gray, a little bit of quinacridone violet. So it's quite a mixture. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm putting my hand down here to keep the stencil from moving too far. And I'm just going to go ahead and put in some brush strokes to fill in the area. The colors are going to be silhouetted against the background. So you could do this with almost anything. You could pick a still life. You could put that in here, or you can do a flower. Or you could do there's all kinds of things you can do this thing with. But I decided to do an old barn. I come over here and hold my hands on the stencil and get that old open the stencil out a little bit there. Get the brush strokes in there. Now I'm checking the values now. I want it to be nice and dark, so against that background. So I'm going back in, putting in some more color on top of that. Okay, now here's a surprise. Now I don't know what's going to. I've never done this before, so it's first time. There. So that's my design using a stencil. And if I want to clean up the edges a little bit, I can come in here with a brush and I can work a little bit on the edges. Get that little fence out there a little more defined. There. This little cabin here on the end, this little shed on the end, make it a little more. So I'm fine tuning a little bit of the design. Okay. Now I can take the Hake brush, which I like to do, is to take the Hake brush, put it in the same mix over here, and take out some of the moisture, and I just go in. I'm going to do a dry brush stroke, a little basically. Give it a little roadway across the bottom. Okay. So there's all kinds of things you can do. I'm just playing with that one right there. Okay. So that's a wet wash, and I did a silhouette here of an old house. Okay, an old barn, an old shed, just to play around with it. Okay, let me put this aside. Now the last one I have is probably a more interesting one, and really is artistically, is the streak wash. And the streak wash, what I like to use it for is, in this case, I'm going to use it for a waterfall. So my reference today is waterfall. The moving water, they're in a pattern, a vertical pattern here of water falling down the rocks. So that's what a streak wash will do. So that's my reference diagram or reference photo, a waterfall. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, I'm gonna wet the paper, but not the whole thing, just parts of it. But I'm gonna use my palette in a bottle dot sprayer, which is sold exclusively on Everett's Watercolors. My palette in a bottle, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just put. Now you can do this with a brush or you can splatter, but I'm just gonna put some water on this. Just put some water across here, kind of a haphazard pattern here. And I could splatter it. I could drop it on with my hands. There's all kinds of ways to get water on the paper. But basically, you just not controlled. It's uncontrolled. Now I'm going to take a 3/4 inch brush. Now I'm going to take a little bit of. I'm going to take paint. I'm just going to go right on top of those drops I just put in there. So I'm going to build a little reservoir up here of color up here at the top. Okay. Now I'm going to tilt this one vertically. And I want those drops to start falling down. Need a little more water. Maybe I'll take the spray bottle a little bit more and come up there and touch that edge of that just a little bit more. Okay, get some more drops in there. Okay, I want the water to flow. Okay, got to control the flow a little bit by letting the water run down in the direction it will go. You can turn it back and upside down. Might have to get some more water flow in there and get it started. Now, some of these larger areas, what I do is sometimes I'll pick up. There's a big puddle down here. I'll just pick that up with a thirsty brush. Take out the water, pick that up so it doesn't flow too much more. Pick up some more paint. I want to get this thing going a little bit more. So I'm going in now and getting a little more action here in the waterfall. Okay. Well, a streak wash is exactly that. You get some water on the paper, and you put paint in near the water, and then you tilt the painting and let it flow in different whatever direction you want it to go in. If it was falling rain, or in this case it's a waterfall, so I want it to fall vertically. All right, and that's how you get it started. Okay, so we'll set this aside. So I've got one here basically done that I did earlier. Okay, this one here was a little more. I got a little more spray bottle on this one. And I got the water flowing very nicely on this one. So this was an example of what would happen if you let the water flow in a streak. That's a streak. That's a streaked wash. Now, what can we do with this? Well, uh, once you get the streak done, then we're going to go in and we're going to do a painting on top of this. So I'm going to put some rocks. I'm going to paint some rocks and some background behind the waterfalls, which will make it look like roaring falls. This is what I call it. So I'm going to take take the 3/4 inch brush, get some rock color, which is dark brown, Sienna and Ultramarine, and I'm going to go up here and put some rocks right here at the top, right along the edge of this flow. So rocks are angular and they have sharp edges. Some are flat, some are round. So you can have a little bit of it, good. Have a lot of fun here building rocks and so forth, painting rocks. Then I'll come down here and build another ledge or another rock down here. Connect the darks together. And this side over here, we're going to put some more rocks over here. So let's start it here. The water flowing down this way. And I think I'll put a rock. I'm gonna put a rock right here in the middle, or in the middle of the flow. Put a smaller rock in here, like right there. So I made a large rock, a medium-sized rock, and then a small rock here. Okay. Then I can put another one down here on the side. Connect these darks together a little bit. And as far as the background goes, we can put a little bit of green in our mix up here, and we can go ahead and put a little bit of trees back here. I picked up a big lava blue, so I'm gonna need to get another brush here to get started. I can use this butt over here. I can put a little bit of greenery up here behind the waterfall. So I'm just kind of inventing this as I go along. The trees come down on top of the rock, right behind the rocks here. Little tree shapes, little trunks and so forth showing up here, just to indicate branches. Now down here at the bottom, what I like to do now is just add a little more, let's say a little more interest down here. So the waterfall has fallen, and we come down here at the bottom, and we put a little pool down here, where the water has come down at the bottom, and it's put a little pool that can flow down. Maybe it's a little river, a little stream down here that's flowing into. So we'll put a little puddle down here, a little pool of water, down here at the bottom, indicating the water is flowing off to some direction. Okay, they're just some ideas. And I can go in and add a little more texture to the rocks. So these kinds of paintings are fun to play with the washes. Number one, we're playing with washes today. And then what you do with them at the end is really just an opportunity to play and experiment, add some more colors, or work with shapes, or work with design. And we'll wait for this to dry just a little bit more, and I can take. Now you can use a tool. Now, this is a sharp tool here that I picked up today, and I can use that to pull out some branches over here behind the waterfall. So this is a little bit of a little technique here to use. You can use a palette knife. You can use a sharp instrument. Now here I'm going through wet paint, so it's going to fill in dark, which is okay. If I wait to get a little bit drier, then I'd be able to take out some of the negative part. Be able to eliminate some of the. Here I'll use my thumbnail, and I can remove some of the paint, and it will be white, the lighter value underneath. Okay, just a couple ideas there how to make different shapes like that. Okay, so this is an example of a streaked wash, And because a streak, it means the direction you want. In this case, I want a vertical streak for a waterfall. You can have a streak, let's say the wind was blowing for trees and so forth, or the rain was falling down, or it was a storm, and then you had the wind blowing in a certain direction, then you can have the flow of your paint going in the direction you want it to go. So it really is a good exercise in controlling the amount of water, the amount of paint in your brush, and also being able to contain the actual flow of the paint and water on the paper that you get down there. Now I've got a small mat here. What I've done, I can just take a small mat, put that around the painting. Gives a little idea of what it would look like in a painting. Nothing real fancy on that one. This is the street street wash, and I'm calling that roaring waterfalls. And this one, you can put a frame around this one. You can add more detail. You can put trees on here and so forth. Yeah, I'll name this one colorful sky. Colorful sky. That could work with that one. And then we did a gradated wash with a sailboat reflection. This is I call it still waters, because in a still water you would see the reflection in the water, and then you see some flow of the water with ripples of the wind blowing the water and so forth. So that would be an example of a gradated wash from dark to light and from light to dark. Okay, I did it both ways here. And the first one we did was a flat wash, which was in this case this is I'm calling this one morning glow, because I've got the early morning sunrise coming up over the hills, and I got a darker foreground, which would be the hills with some trees on there. So this would be a morning glow, for example, this kind of painting. All right. Okay, so those are the 4 examples of the 4 washes we did today. The flat wash, the gradated wash, the wet on wet, and the street wash. So let's go back to my main camera. Okay. As I said before, it's important to practice and become familiar with washes, because that's going to be the way you control the paint and the water on your painting. You can see here a little bit of trouble with some of the washes, but that takes practice. Before I do a painting, really before I do a painting, I practice that section that I'm going to put a special wash on. I'll practice that so I get down the technique before I put it onto a final painting. And then the final painting is still going to be different, because in some of these washes, there's very little control you have over the flow of the water in the paint. And that's the most, I think the fun part of watercolor is doing a wash and really not knowing what the results will be. And then sometimes you take the results you have and make something out of it. I think that's the most important thing that an artist can do, is be flexible enough to change your idea or change the flow or add something new to what you've already started. So that's something to do with these special washes. So I hope you enjoyed today's program, and I'll be back again next week on Thursday at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So bye for now there.